You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeology Show, episode 329.
On today's show, we talk about an overcrowded cemetery in Colorado, man-made islands in Scotland, and the destruction of an intaglio on the Mexico-U.S. border.
Let's dig a little deeper and try to follow the regulations this time.
Never.
Welcome to the show, everybody.
Hello.
All right. Well, hey, just a quick little update here for those that like hearing our travel plans. You may have figured out we're not traveling as much anymore.
I know. We're like not talking about it. And I almost feel like a little bit bad because we don't have any fun places to talk about. But
yeah,
our new house in the new city that we live in is very fun. It's beautiful here. So
yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
So,
we're in the Hendersonville, North Carolina area, if anybody is familiar with that. And it's really gorgeous here. So we're very happy with this area.
Yeah. But we are going to do some traveling this fall and hopefully after Christmas again as well. So we'll see.
For sure, the RV is still in our lives. We bought this house because we could park the RV in the driveway, which is where it is. I can basically see it from where I'm sitting. So we will be doing more traveling and hopefully like hitting more historic places around the country, because that's something that we've loved to do too, is to use our traveling as a way to go and experience more of our historic places that have been preserved for us. You know, it's great. So that's the plan.
In fact, we go back to Mexico and we're hoping to hit there again. But man, I've been reading this book that I got sent to me by a publisher about basically the Native Americans and their interactions with the Spanish, among others, that were coming from the Mexico sort of mainland. I don't want to say mainland because it's not an island. Spanish thought it was an island, but Baja California, they thought it was an island for about 150 years before they realized it wasn't.
The Spanish did?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they thought there was a passage like through the Sea of Cortez.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And nobody could ever find it. And at some point they're like, hey, bro, maybe this isn't an island.
Hold on. This is totally connected.
Yeah. Are those mountains all the way up?
That's funny. I did not know that.
So it's a really good book. I'll talk about it a little bit later. We're actually going to interview the author on the Rock Art podcast because this is where that interview came through, was from the Rock Art podcast resources. So, but it's pretty cool. But I'm excited to continue reading that book and learn more about it. And I'll talk about it a little bit later once we do the interview. But I'm excited because all of it's, I wouldn't say very familiar. We haven't traveled to Baja that much, but we've been in some places in the Baja. And the place we go is Baja adjacent.
It is. It's Sonora, which is like right next door. So very close.
But it's really cool kind of listening and hearing about that history. So, or reading, I guess I should say. It's weird. I'm reading an actual book. It's been a long time since I had like a paper book in my hand.
Right.
You know?
Well, it was not possible when we were traveling so much because like where would we, I guess we could have had it sent to our mailbox, which would then get forwarded to us eventually.
But then where do we store books?
Yeah, but where would we store the book? Yeah. It was just like not something we could do. But now we have the house and we can do that. So
Oh yeah. Every publisher that sends me an email says, you want a copy of this book, bro? And I'm like, send it over. So,
we've gotten some good ones. There is at least one beautiful book that we definitely need to put a little bit more time into looking at and then do a review of. So lots of book ideas now that we're in a house, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's some other people that had some ideas, namely about where they were going to be buried, but the city has put a kibosh on that. So we've got this article. It's from cpr.org. Let me turn off my reader. What is that?
Yeah, I believe this is like a local newspaper website, basically, for this local area.
It's probably Colorado Public Radio.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's
I think it is.
There's a frequency of that. I didn't actually look at that. I immediately hit the reader button because we have Apple computers. I'm like, get rid of all your junk and give me the reader.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah. But anyway, this is called State Archaeologist Proposes Closing Overcrowded Lafayette Cemetery. City Council tables decision. Okay. And this is Lafayette, Colorado. I immediately went to Louisiana. It takes a minute before you realize it's not Louisiana.
Yeah, it was very funny. And I didn't know what CPR was either. So I was like, I have no idea where this is happening, but this is all very interesting because it's like archaeologists getting wrapped up in like local politics kind of unintentionally. So it was an interesting story from that respect. But I had no idea.
Well, what caused all this controversy or what caused this to be written really, was the Lafayette Cemetery City Council unanimously voted to postpone a decision on permanently halting casket burials at Lafayette Cemetery. So there was a proposal on the table to permanently halt casket burials at the cemetery.
Yeah.
And then they basically tabled that for a bit.
Yeah. And like spoiler alert, but the reason they tabled it is because people are pissed.
Yeah.
Like they are so mad, and we're going to get into that. But I personally found this story so interesting because it's like a CRM company did some work and they got wrapped up in this, and then the state archaeologist had to get in here too and like have an opinion. And now all of a sudden these opinions are being brought in front of a city council. It's just crazy, right? Yeah.
So this is all based on the state archaeologist and findings from a CRM firm that they hired, a cultural resource management firm, so a professional archaeology firm. It was actually SWCA. Us in the business, we call them SWCA. But
which apparently they hate that. So
well, that's what they're called. So sorry, SWCA.
What I've heard is that they hate that. But go on. Yeah.
Even people that work at SWCA call it SWCA. It's just probably 3 people at the top that are like, it's not SWCA.
Right.
Anyway, so SWCA. No, so they did ground penetrating radar, which is basically like dragging a little suitcase or a lawnmower across the ground, and it shoots these radar signatures. And I've seen burials and done ground penetrating radar when I did my master's degree.
In a cemetery,
In a
right?
cemetery.
Yeah.
You see what they look like, and they make these very distinct parabolas. They call it inverted parabolas. And that's what every GPR signature is. It's an inverted parabola because of how radar is reflected. But graves just kind of hit a little different, and you can if you know what
obvious.
you're looking for, you can tell. Yeah. So anyway, they did this because in 2025, well, in a number of other times, but this was documented in 2025, workers digging graves twice encountered bone and casket fragments. So they're digging new graves.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh,
like, wait a minute, why are there bones here? Like, was there a grave? Like, what is going on?
So, yeah, they hit like these wood fragments. They hit a bone, and they call the police, and the police come over and be like, oh, those are just old burials, bro.
Yeah. And they're like, why are you calling me? Like, this is not a murder. Like, the police don't really belong here. So they had to figure out something, of course.
Right.
And so they hired the cultural resource management firm, SWCA.
SWCA. I don't know what SWCA is. Yeah.
To do this GPR study. And the conclusion is basically that the cemetery is overcrowded.
Yeah.
There's not enough room.
So there are, and just the picture, you can see the sheer number of headstones.
Yeah. But, and they're not all old either. These are like some relatively recent ones too.
Yeah. People are being buried now.
Yeah. But
up until a few weeks ago.
Well, right. But archaeology, it's interesting because archaeology is not just about super old stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
This is relatively recent, but archaeologists have the ability to see below the surface using the proper technology, which is why they employed a CRM firm to do this work.
Right. So, and I'll get to why I think that is important archaeologically here in a minute, but there's about 2,000, and it says about, and like it's a very specific number, and then they say about 2,179 visible grave markers. Like, are they visible or not? You should have an exact number on that.
That should be very specific.
How many grave markers do you have?
Yeah.
The GPR survey, which wasn't 100%, identified approximately 3,504 casketed graves.
So crazy. That's 1,500 more than what they have. Almost 1,500 more than what they have documented.
Yeah, that includes the ones that they know exist, right?
Yeah.
And the number of burials may be higher because, as I said, some areas could not be fully scanned. So it's not 100%. Either they're right next to the trees and there's tree roots. I mean, that's going to give all kinds of weird, trees
indications on the GPR.
So the cemetery is just under 5 acres and has been used for more than 140 years. So there's a long history there.
Yeah. And that is probably why we have more burials than they know about because, stuff happens over 140 years, right? And like there was a grave there 100 years ago, but the headstone fell over. It was never replaced, like whatever. And then all of a sudden, 50, 60, 70 years later, nobody knows there's a grave there. And then they're trying to dig a new grave and they're hitting bones and like what, WTF. And that's why you get into this situation.
Yeah, there are so many unmarked graves, basically, that the study concluded that future casket burials, because casket burials take up so much space.
They do.
It's unlike
they are big.
Cremated remains or cremains burial, they take up less space. But a casket burial, you've got to dig a massive hole. But anyway,
person-sized hole, but bigger. Because,
bigger. Yeah. Plus, we're bigger now than we used to be. The caskets are bigger. It's just the whole thing. Anyway, so the GPR study concluded that future casket burials would likely disturb existing human remains and reinforced the recommendation to stop casket burials permanently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this recommendation comes from the state archaeologist, Holly Norton. Like, basically, like, we have to have a moratorium on burials because, we're hitting human remains. And it's such a sticky situation because it's like super disrespectful to like dig up human remains that are there. And like, you have to do it properly too. Like there's a whole lot of like rules you're breaking by digging up human remains, even if you do it accidentally. So they were like, the safest way to proceed is to stop burying people here. And then the city council did pass a temporary moratorium in November of 2025. So just last fall, only allowing case by case burials, basically.
Yeah.
However,
so this was, of course, strongly opposed by residents of the area, families, and just there's a whole lot to this. Read the article.
There is.
But the basics of this are there's at least 100 people who throughout the last 30 years more have purchased burial plots. I mean, when somebody dies young or something like that, or maybe they just wanted to do it to get in the family plots.
Oh, they've run deals. These cemeteries are still for-profit businesses. Like they have business expenses, right? So they've run a deal, especially in like the 80s, I think it said, to sell these plots. And like, okay, well, that's great. That was the 80s. 40 years ago. Yeah. And now people are like rolling up, ready to use the plot that their grandma or their parent or whoever purchased. And to be told that they're not allowed to bury their loved one there in a plot that they had already purchased for a lot of money, probably. Yeah. Well, actually, not all of them were purchased for a lot of money because they ran deals. But still, they did purchase it. And to be told that like they can't be buried there, that's making some people very, very mad.
I mean, I personally believe that unless somebody has a legit like family area where they have staked out a long time ago and said, this is where the Webster family is going to be buried, right? This is where they're going to be buried. It's an area the size of whatever, and however many graves you can fit in there, more power to you, right? But this is your area.
Yeah, but like, what if that was like 30 years ago, as if they designated that? But 30 years ago, they didn't have GPR and they didn't know that a family plot from like 1910 was also there, and the headstones had all been moved and they're gone, and now you're getting buried on top, and you're disturbing those 100-year-old burials every time you bury somebody there.
I'm just talking about the ethics of cemeterial politics to begin with. I'm not talking about this cemetery.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general, I don't think people should be able to buy specific plots ahead of time. And a good example of that is I have a family member who his wife died at a very young age, and he bought the plot next to her where she was buried. Yeah. He's remarried several years in now, and many years in now, actually. And who knows even what's going to happen to this wife? Maybe they get divorced in 10 years and then he marries some other person. Like, where are you going to be buried? Where are you committing yourself to be buried when you're 35 years old? Well, that's an extreme case, but
it is very extreme because most people don't pass away that young, but it does happen. So there's a lot of politics wrapped up in it because some people do want to, like some children want to buy the plot near their parents. No matter what happens to them, they might, get married and move away or whatever, but they still want to be buried near their parents. And like that's legitimate too. But
that's why I'm talking about like, the long-standing family plots where you see it and everybody's got the same last name. The family stays close and it's usually patriarchal. It's usually coming down the father's line or something like that. And they've been buried there for the last 300 years, that kind of thing. That's one thing. But just, buying a couple plots next to you for your immediate family, not knowing or caring what's going to happen to them or their family later on in life is actually a little bit disrespectful, I think. And it's not only that, but it's really difficult to manage for a cemetery.
I just don't know. I don't know if disrespectful is the right word. It's just, it seems like a bad business choice for the cemetery to make because, like you said, you don't know what is going to happen, who the people are, and whether or not they're going to actually want to use that burial plot. But at the same time, we're talking about like people potentially choosing not to use a burial plot. But in this case, they're all choosing to use the burial plots. And that is the problem because the cemetery has gotten so overcrowded. Yeah. And for me, I'm like looking at the city who chose to sell these. This is a city cemetery, right? Like they chose to sell these plots. And I know it happened 40 years ago in the 80s. I get that. It did, but they did that. And like, you have to honor that to a certain point, right? Like you have to figure out a way that you can work with these people and allow them to be buried with their loved ones because a couple who was in their 50s in the 80s bought a plot and now they're reaching the end of their lives and they're choosing to use this plot.
True.
Like, husband and wife want to be buried together. Like,
I understand, but they don't actually have to accommodate those requests if it's safety concerns or environmental concerns.
But they chose to sell it, though.
No, I understand that, but that was a long time ago, and times are different now. So what the city is doing, to their credit, is they're offering $1,500 buyback for plots.
That's true.
They're offering to bury people at a different cemetery 5 miles away. And quite honestly, if you want to be buried next to mom and dad, dig them up and move them to the other cemetery.
Okay, but I'm saying that the city should be doing that for them.
Oh, sure, 100%.
Because you bought this plot to be married.
Yeah.
Married in death.
To the dirt.
No, you bought this plot to be buried with your loved one. And then they died 20 years before you. They've been in the ground there for 20 years. And they're like, oh, by the way, you can't be buried here anymore, but you can go to this cemetery down here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would be like, well, that's fine. I'll go down there. But, you know, this is my plot. Bring my people with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's all kinds of religious stuff that gets involved, too.
Yeah,
like,
people
there's
don't
plenty
want
of
to
people
be...
that they don't want to disturb the remains.
Well, they don't want to be cremated.
They don't
like,
want...
there's a whole lot of stuff wrapped up in it. But do they want to disturb other people's burials, too? They don't give a crap about them.
Well, that's true. Like, disturbing somebody else's remains should also be very important to these
Sure.
to
but
people.
It's not. It's not. It's only their own family.
Because they don't have names. They don't know who it is. It's like keyboard warriors, but, you know,
could be their
thing.
heritage. Could be their family members. They
yeah,
don't even
it probably
know it.
is.
You know,
it's such an interesting and sticky question because, like, how do you? And it's such an individual thing too. Like, some people are probably fine just moving down the road, and other people are fine with doing cremains burial, but some are not.
Right,
and they're very mad.
So, what does this mean for actual archaeology?
Yeah.
Well, the one thing is, this is really good for archaeologists to get out there and just do this, right? Mm-hmm. I want to say training, but there was probably some people on here on the team who didn't know what GPR could do, and they were learning. And this is a really good learning example with the other people who do know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But also kind of makes you wonder about other cemeteries.
Oh my gosh, there's probably so many that are like this.
Was it just this one that's been mismanaged for 140 years? Or at least a certain period of time where they apparently just removed headstones or did whatever they were going to do.
Right.
Like, what happened to all those? Is there a pattern to it?
Yeah.
Is it really isolated to this cemetery, or is this a systemic problem against cemeteries?
It has to be a systemic problem, because you found this at the cemetery that you were working at in Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Where there was missing headstones because it was 100 years ago, and like stuff happens. You know?
And also
wood headstones too.
That's what I was going to say. People were very impoverished in that area back in the day, and they couldn't afford a big marble headstone, right? So either it was really tiny and it's been subsumed by the ground because nobody maintained it, or it was wooden and it's eroded away. And again, the people who cared about it moved on.
They're gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, they're in the plot next door.
The wooden cross falls over. If nobody's there to pick it up, it's going to be gone after a certain amount of time. So
that cemetery on the campus of the University of Georgia actually had, this is not while we were there, but in the past they have had burials eroding out of the side of the bank going down by the road.
That's crazy.
Because a road was put in right next to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And it was cut in, and they've made road improvements, and it's just, the bank is eroding now, where it didn't used to do that before. It used to be solid ground. And they've had bones sticking out.
Yeah. So crazy.
Anyway, the importance of an archaeological degree can't be understated.
These are the kind of things you could work on.
Yeah.
Telling people that they're not allowed to be buried with their loved ones.
Right.
I feel so bad for the state archaeologist in this situation. I'm not sure it was handled super well to be like, oh, by the way, full stop, you're done. No more burials.
Right.
Like, it should definitely be something that's a little bit more like working with the people who this is affecting.
Yeah.
And this is maybe an example of how archaeologists need to think a little bit more about how they're interacting with the public rather than just like throwing out things like, you know, moratoriums and not thinking about how it's going to affect people. So,
All right. Well, we're going from here all the way over to Scotland, where we don't have any burials yet, but I'm sure they're coming. Back in a minute. Welcome back to episode, I don't even know, 329 of the Archaeology Show.
You sound like David. He never knows what episode number. He always has episode 30 something or whatever.
That's right. That's right. Or just some of our other podcasters would just make up a number at random.
Yep, that has happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. So anyway, this article is called "This Island in Scotland is Actually a Man-Made Mini Landmass Resting on a Wooden Platform. New discovery shows."
I know. I love this article. Again, this was new to me. I had never heard of these before. So it was very cool.
So one thing I think is cool, you got to go look at the pictures, because we're about to talk about like this stone pathway that is clearly visible from the sky. I don't know if it's space or just like a drone shot, but you got to go check it out because it was super cool.
Such a cool aerial view for sure.
So, all right, let's hear about it.
So archaeologists are excavating a crannog, I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but Crannog.
You are.
I feel like I should be more Scottish when I say it, but I'm not going to try to do a Scottish accent because no.
No, I think if you said it in a Scottish accent, nobody would know what the word was. It's like, plus anyway. You have to have a lot of bourbon. Scotch, really Scotch.
So Crannog is an artificial island, and this one is in Loch Borgastall.
Again, not even close.
Not even close. But
a lot more throat in that one.
Yeah. And they discovered that the island rests on a large timber foundation, which is hidden beneath the water. So we knew that these were constructed islands. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know this. That's new information to me. I did not know that was a thing at all, but it is. And in this one in particular is built up on timber, which is just so crazy.
Yeah, archaeologists and researchers have seen timber pieces sticking out before, just like from underneath, and they just assumed there was some sort of buried structure existed and never really had the funding or inclination to do an excavation.
Yeah, they didn't know that it was an integral part of the structure of this island, but
yeah.
But the discovery was made as part of the Islands of Stone research project, which studies all of these artificial islands, which apparently there are many.
I want to be a part of that.
Scotland and Ireland. Yeah, super cool, right?
Yeah.
Crannogs are man-made islets constructed using sophisticated engineering techniques, and quite a bit of labor is required to make one of these, of course.
Yeah, researchers previously believed that most Scottish crannogs dated to the Iron Age, but recent studies suggest some are much older, originating in the Neolithic period around 5,000 years ago.
That's a lot older.
That's quite a bit older.
Thousands of years older than what they had thought before. So that's cool. The Loch Borgastall excavation revealed an unexpectedly large wooden structure beneath the stone island. It's so crazy. Yeah. It's like a platform under there holding up this entire thing.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah, they uncovered cut timbers, a coppice-like roundwood, and a huge tree section. So basically, it sounds like, if they were experienced at building these things and seen them before and was like, okay, time to build our thing, right?
Yeah.
Let's go do this. And maybe it just wasn't structurally sound. I don't know. And they threw a bunch of wood underneath there first and then started putting the stone on top of it. I'm not really sure what the process was there, but we'll talk about this one in particular, and maybe all the others, how long this was actually used.
Yeah.
Or at least different time periods of it. Yes. It could have gone thousands of years without being used.
Right.
But yeah, the earliest layer of this circular wooden platform, which is about 75 feet across, as we mentioned, dates to roughly 5,000 years ago.
And they must have put some thought and effort into it because it's, roughly circular, and it's like they created it to be that shape and that size on purpose. Mm-hmm. You don't do that without it being purposeful, Yeah,
the platform was covered with what they're calling brushwood and later reinforced with layers of stone and additional brushwood during the Middle Bronze Age about 2,000 years later. So 2,000 years is a really long time for something to sit there. And again, did the people who built it they kind of forgot about it, moved away, whatever, and other people came in? Or were there really a couple thousand years between usage? It's what I want to know.
Well, it might just be that there was a couple thousand years between modifications, but it was being used all along.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know if it was being used all along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then there were further additions made during the Iron Age, roughly 1,000 years after the Bronze Age modifications.
Yeah.
So another 1,000 years later, and people are making more big changes to it. So continue to be used, continue to have changes made to it.
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, take a look at the pictures because they also studied a submerged stone causeway linking the Crannog to the shore. So it's too small to really have tidal swings. So this causeway was probably...
Yeah, this is a lake. A loch is a lake, basically.
Basically, yeah.
So, yeah.
But the causeway, you probably could have walked on it back in the day. Maybe it's just kind of submerged slowly through time or something like that. Or maybe there were more pieces on top of it. Who knows?
Yeah. And all of that is getting to the fact that we don't really know why they built these or what they were doing with them.
Yeah.
So we know that there's pottery fragments dating to the Neolithic period, both in and around the Crannog and in the causeway. So we've got that.
Which I always wonder about pottery fragments. Were people just chuck it,
well, if you dropped something made of pottery and it shattered, would you bother to clean it up? Or would you just let it be subsumed by the environment? Because kind of who cares, right?
How much of a common occurrence was that though? Because we find pottery everywhere in the world.
We do.
Once people start making pottery, all the trash is pottery.
That is true. But also there's the whole something is left behind and it just breaks over time because pottery is not I mean, it can be fragile in some circumstances. So,
but this was potentially used for thousands of years. They would have been like, look, a pot, I'm going to grab it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's just, there's so much broken pottery in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to go back in time and seeing somebody. I want to know if it was a heartbreak when that happened, you know, like how easy was it to make pottery in certain cases, right?
Yeah.
Like for certain groups, it was probably really kind of a struggle, you know, so you didn't want to break them. Breaking it was a real hardship. You couldn't just pop down to Costco and grab another set.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not sure that the breaking always happened by the people that left it behind. That sometimes it was just the pot that left behind and then it broke in situ. You know?
Sure. It seems less likely though.
I mean,
that they're just chucking whole pots over.
Yeah, it's just both things probably did happen. But
anyway, archaeologists believe the scale of labor and resources required to build crannogs was, such as this one, were socially or culturally significant. So basically, you either had somebody who was really important saying, you will build this, and everybody was listening, and or it was more religious and spiritual and ritual in nature, and people just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Right? They wanted to build this thing because they needed it. It's like, well, we need a church. We're going to build a church, that kind of deal. Right. Yeah.
But the purpose of these crannogs still is unknown, right? We don't know. Ritual, ceremonial, high status residence, maybe. I mean, if you have pottery, right? And pottery indicates typically that it's some kind of household trash, right? Not always, but
do we live in a crannog in the forest on a little island?
Well, no, because there's no water near us anywhere.
I mean, there's a dry creek bed, kind of.
No, it's just a wash. No.
Yeah. All right.
So this project also advanced archaeological recording technology for shallow water environments.
Yeah.
That was one other interesting thing that they did here. And the researchers noted that the traditional underwater photogrammetry methods don't work here because these lakes are just too murky, essentially, is what it comes down to. There's sediment, there's choppy water, floating vegetation. You know, the light is distorted sometimes. There's weird reflections. It's just too murky, the water is.
Yeah. So photogrammetry, really quick before we describe what they did, is basically using a whole series of pictures taken at different angles, but usually consistent distances from the thing that you're trying to record.
Yeah.
And you could use photogrammetry to create a 3D image of an object, or you can do it on an entire site. But basically, you use a program that can, and there's a number of programs out there that'll do this, but you use a program out there that will basically stitch all these together and create a 3D model from the photographs. And it's really cool when you do that. You can see so many things without actually being there.
But you need nice, clear, sharp images.
That's pretty crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
which is why the underwater piece here was always problematic because the water's just not clear.
Yeah. These guys' team developed a new method using two small waterproof cameras mounted a fixed distance apart. So probably on like a little rig or something like that. And then a diver moved the cameras through the water, collecting overlapping images that were then later combined into a detailed 3D model of the site. And the way they were able to do this is because, again, one thing photogrammetry is really good at, and I've done drone photogrammetry before of like larger structures and things like that. One thing it's really good at is eliminating noise. So if you've got like a tree on the edge of a building or something, but you can get a lot of other angles of it, you could basically just get rid of that tree.
Right.
Because as long as you've got other angles and it can interpret what was there, and not really interpret, but kind of get around it, right?
Yeah. Fill in the blanks, essentially,
fill in the blanks,
right?
Yeah. So with one camera and traditional photogrammetry, that just wasn't feasible here. But with multiple cameras at, predictable angles and moving them on a rig, they were able to basically digitize out the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Like you just overlap all those images closely enough that you can get rid of everything and just dial into the island.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So hopefully they can use this technique on other crannogs in areas where, the shallow water makes it difficult to not only do excavation, but see anything.
Yeah.
And using this photogrammetric method, they can really help advance some of these studies.
Yeah, for sure. Because now I'm wondering like how many more of these crannogs are built on wooden platforms. Because you can't tell that just by looking at them. They look like a little tiny landmass, right? And then until you start looking at the aerial images or you look at what is underneath the island, you don't know that it was man-made onto a platform. It's just so cool.
All right. Well, we're going to go from there and do a 180, and we're going to go over to an organization in the United States that is doing the opposite of advancing science and archaeological practice. They're going the other direction. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the Archaeology Show, episode 329. And now here is, well, we've got actually about, I think 4 or 5 articles linked within this show notes.
We did. We found a whole bunch and we were like, you know what? We just need to link everything because some of these are like personal stories about this site and others are just reporting of the facts. So they're all there for your reading pleasure.
Well, one of the ones I happen
displeasure, maybe.
Yeah. Well, one of the ones I happen to have in front of me is, quote, "They don't care," end quote. Trump's border wall construction damages 1,000-year-old sacred indigenous site.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely had to talk about this because this is another example of, CRM not being involved in work that is happening. You know, our first story was about how CRM was brought in and like maybe they didn't properly communicate to the public what was going on and how things were going to happen. And now in this case, like, I don't even know if any CRM companies were involved at all in making sure and clearing this area. So
that's an interesting way to phrase that because there probably were cultural studies done in the area, but they were ignored.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Like they knew this was here. So.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. We don't know what we're talking about yet. Yeah. So, all right. So this is an area called the Las Playas Intaglio. And again, it's right on this easement area where they're building this new wall. And this is all part of Trump's Big Beautiful Wall project. That's what he calls it. And
like hurts to even say that.
I know. Yeah. But basically, I mean, people think that there's a wall between the US and Mexico and they're just reinforcing it. No, there was, I think I read something like there's almost 2,000 miles of border and there's only like 600 miles of it that actually has a wall. The rest is so inhospitable that nobody's ever put up a wall. Yeah. Right. But now Trump wants a wall along the entire nearly 2,000 mile border. And he wants the biggest, he wanted a big concrete wall, but they're metal slats like you see in other portions of the wall. It's basically cheaper.
In some places, like in this place, like there has been a wall there, but it wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So there had to be more wall constructed, which is just...
Well, they're building basically the same wall along the whole thing. So that's what they're doing. They're taking all the little bits walls. Yeah. Anyway, the thing here is that we have to remember too, is that whether you believe it or not, or like it or not, international borders are a matter of national security. And when there's national security concerns, all your usual laws and regulations can and often do go right out the window. And
like they don't have to consult.
Yeah. One of those are environmental concerns. Yeah. Right. They've said you're going to build this wall and it doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're going.
Like they don't care what kind of habitat for whatever endangered species you're cutting through or what, cultural resources that you might be destroying. They just they don't have to care about that.
When it comes to an international border, that is one of the few things, regardless of the country you're talking about, where they are more than likely going to, if they have to, do whatever they can to secure their border.
The thing that really is very frustrating about that for me is that the people in history who occupied these areas did not have the same borders that we have today. Those borders did not exist to them. So when you're cutting a modern border through some landscape, you're cutting right through somewhere that people in the past used on both sides of it. And how can you just disregard the fact that in the past, this was a unified space to the people who used it in the past?
So what? No international borders?
No, we have to have international borders. I get that. But there should be a way to care for these resources that crossed both borders in a better way than
what we're talking about is a 200-foot long geoglyph called an intaglio.
Yeah.
Basically, geoglyph is anything that basically uses the earth and is like earth, large sized essentially.
Like the Nazca lines. Those are the ones that are always compared to because they are the huge lines that you can see from space. And this is the same idea here. It's a large figure that you can see from above that was constructed
200 feet long, and it looks like a fish sitting on the desert floor. And archaeologists estimate that it was created about 1,000 years ago. Now, here's the thing. They were coming up against it with bulldozers, and there were some people out that live in the nearby town of Ajo, and they were out. I think they were on a run, or it was like a running club or something, or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was, but they were out doing something. And there's people out live in those areas that just like going out on the landscape.
Well, yeah. And there was a road running across because there is a border wall there already. There's already a wall. Let's be clear here. The wall exists. It's already there. So there's a road that runs along it that they were probably just running along or whatever.
Yeah. So they saw on one day that, I think it was a Thursday, that bulldozers were getting real close to this well-known, well-documented. Everybody knows it's there. This intaglio, right? This huge fish. And they immediately called the concern is in Ajo, Arizona, which is not that far away. We actually drive through Ajo many times.
Every time we go to Mexico, we drive through Ajo. So
it's on the main road going down
very
there.
familiar with that area. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they talk to them and then they communicate with the construction company, and they're like, they figured it was all good by the time they were done at the end of the day. They're like, okay, great. They're gonna
chill for a second.
Yeah.
Have a plan, whatever.
They come back the next day and it's gone.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it, not the whole thing.
Like 30% or 40% or something. They just
I think only 30% was left. I don't know.
You're right. Yeah. You're right.
But anyway, they took this huge section of it and caused extensive damage with bulldozers, right?
Yeah.
So
just bulldozed right through it. It's crazy.
Yeah, bulldozed right through it.
And to be fair to the construction workers, you can't really see this thing if you're just on the ground and you don't know it's there.
Yeah, but they knew it was there.
They would have known. The higher ups would certainly have known it was there.
People have been coming out there. You're sitting on a boulder.
I'm not like apologizing for them. I'm just saying, like, you don't necessarily know it's there.
I mean, we have been a little peek into our personal lives. We decided to rewatch Law and Order from season 1, episode 1. And I feel like I know the law. I don't want to
admit this to the world right now.
I feel like I know the law. So, no, I really don't know the law. But here's the thing. They are just sitting there and they're looking at this. We've been on construction crews where, we're out there monitoring and there's a work stoppage or something like that. Those guys are literally just standing there or sitting atop their bulldozer, which is sitting 12 feet up high in the air. And they're looking out and going, I mean, I can basically see everything from up here. And I know exactly what's going on. People are talking, but let's just be absolutely honest here. The construction company, they're not probably too concerned about cultural ethics. They're just trying to get the job done.
No, they have a job and they're just trying to do it.
They don't care about really anything that's in their way. They know that there's certain laws and regulations they have to follow. Like if they find human remains or something like that, they can actually go to jail for not reporting that.
Right.
But a bunch of stones in a certain shape on the desert floor that probably look like all the other stones they bulldozed over. I mean, even if they knew there was a shape there, they just can't see the cultural significance to the people that live there or to just the archaeological record in general from something that we don't have a lot of examples of this in this area, I
totally hear you. And I'm only going to stick up for the construction companies like a little bit more. And only because I have worked with some that do care deeply about making sure that they are protecting whatever resources they're supposed to protect. And we don't know anything about this company. They don't even mention the name of the company in the article. No idea who's doing the work. And I certainly wouldn't want to accuse them of doing something on purpose. Accidents do happen. And I'm also not saying that happened for sure, but I don't want to rule out the fact that it's possible that somebody was bulldozing in that area when they shouldn't have been. And they just got sent to the wrong area by accident. And you know how wait, one more thing. So go listen to the last CRM Archaeology podcast episode because they talk about basically F-ups. That's what that show is about. And Doug, one of the hosts, is talking about how he basically dug a trench on the wrong side of the road because they just like a miscommunication happened, whether it was his crew or the leader or whoever. And all of a sudden they're digging a trench on the wrong side of the road and they weren't supposed to. And like that happens, right?
Sure.
Mistakes happen.
Okay. But in this case, reading the articles, they were working linearly. They were working down a line. But
did they go too far without having permission?
Well, they were working down a line.
Yeah.
Somebody came out and stopped them, talked to them about this thing. The people thought it was good. They left, come back, and it's destroyed. Okay. So they knew exactly what they were doing, or somebody did.
Yeah.
But my point with all this is it actually goes a little bit deeper than that because a lot of people that work in these types of environments are probably on a predictable side of the political spectrum. And not all of them, of course, but people who are doing this kind of thing and, they're sitting here on Trump's big, beautiful wall. And if they support any of his politics, and we're not saying one way or another where people should, I'm just saying if they do, they are tending to feel, and for people that are not in this country, they're tending to feel a little more empowered because Trump gets away with pretty much anything he wants to do. And they're like, well, if we just bulldoze right on through here, what's the worst that could happen? Like it's
easier to ask forgiveness and permission.
Well, there's
that kind of attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because they know for a fact that all of the environmental permits have essentially been waived.
Yeah.
So there is no actual repercussion. It was more on the good faith that they stopped bulldozing.
It is. Like whatever they did was because they were like, oh, okay, we understand this is important.
Right.
So we're going to do some things to,
But even so, I've heard, obviously off the record from construction companies doing monitoring. I remember this specifically when I was in Florida. This one actual bulldozer operator that I was working with, he was clearing some stuff out. It was just him and I working basically. And I remember him saying that, like, he's been told before by people that, hey, as long as we don't incur too many fines within a certain period of time, it's cheaper to pay the fine than let the bulldozer sit there idling.
Right.
You got a whole bunch of construction crews.
Oh, that hurts so bad, right?
It's costing you $20,000 a day to have them sitting there. They're in a remote area where, you're paying for their lodging, you're paying for their everything.
Yeah.
You're paying to get vehicles out there. That bulldozer is $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And
pay the fine and
it's cheaper to pay the fine.
Get the work
and
done.
In this case, they likely would never get fined.
Yeah.
So it's even worse.
Yeah.
So not only do you have the arrogance of the construction workers going, we just need to get this done because we got another project right behind this and we'll just pay the fine, because they don't understand the cultural significance, because archaeologists have basically failed in our communication. But then also the sort of, well, we're not going to get caught. We have no repercussions, either A, because they're, MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters and they just think that they can't do no wrong. But also they probably can't do any wrong in this particular case because they've been given waivers.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah. I hate this. I hate everything about this. Cause like there is already a wall there. So like, to understand the geography a little bit, like you have a wall, right? And the intaglio was there and well documented, but it was just a few feet on the U.S. side of the wall.
10 to 15 feet.
10 to 15 feet.
From the wall itself. But there's a huge easement on the U.S. side of the wall.
Yes.
I don't know about the Mexico side, but the U.S. side for driving, for border patrol maintenance.
Yeah. But 10 to 15 feet is not very far from the wall. I understand.
No, it's right on it.
Like it is right there. But the thing is that the wall already existed in this place. And they're
putting up a bigger one. They need heavier equipment in there.
They're putting up a bigger wall, but like, okay. So this
isn't about wall politics.
I know, but it's just very frustrating because there's no need for a bigger wall.
Right. But this isn't
in this particular section, they could have found a way to like leave this preserved, leave the wall that is there in place originally doing its job because it has been and it's fine and it's a wall that is still there.
Yeah.
Like there has to have been a compromise somewhere in here that nobody bothered to take the time to figure out, And I did read a couple proposed compromises, which honestly didn't sound great to me. Like basically putting this intaglio into a walled off section and going around it with this new big, beautiful wall, if you want to call it that, going all the way around the intaglio. But like, that means that it's not accessible to any of the tribes that might want to use it. It's like pinned between the smaller wall that is there already and then this new larger wall that they're building. Like, that's not helpful.
But also, like, what does that do?
Yeah, what does that do?
Does that just give Mexico access to it and nobody else?
No, because it's between our small wall that already exists and this new big wall that they're building.
But the big wall is an international border.
Yes,
you can't just cross that because you're Native American.
It's in the no man's land between small old wall and the actual border,
so
by
now
the
we're
way. And
North
then
and South Korea.
It's just like, it makes no sense. So like that doesn't make any sense. And then there was some other stuff about like, I don't know, there's other compromises that just didn't really work. And the whole thing is just frustrating because this is the problem. You said it, right? It's the problem with archaeology communication. It's a problem with Native American communication too.
Yeah.
Because Native Americans who care about this site, the tribe that is in this area who care very much what happens to it, they didn't have a loud enough voice that anybody listened to them. And that's not fair. That is not fair at all. People should be listening to them and they're not.
Well, nobody's going to listen to them because when Trump first proposed this, where is it? I'm looking. One of these articles actually has a lot of good background information on this, but basically $51.6 billion was authorized by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025, Trump's second term.
Yep.
Of which 4.5 billion is already allocated for contracts in Arizona. So basically wall construction and other border patrol improvements, right?
Yeah.
And it says that this time around, they're installing a smart wall equipped with lighting, cameras, and other detection technologies. And in some places, a secondary wall, effectively creating an enforcement zone. So almost exactly like what you just said, they could have put it within the enforcement zone. But then that leaves out the Native Americans who have to get there.
It's complete disregard for the cultural significance of the site. It protects it, but it does not care for the cultural significance of it. And that's almost worse because it's like, it feels very placating to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they do this better. if this wall has to happen, I don't know.
Yeah, apparently, what was it, last year in 2025, Kristi Noem, then Department of Homeland Security Secretary, issued environmental waivers for construction of the smart wall across sections of southern Arizona, including Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, which is near there.
Yeah.
But this is within the Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge. So that's actually kind of to the east and sort of almost surrounds Organ Pipe a little bit. But we stayed at Organ Pipe. It's very beautiful there.
It's beautiful.
But the Center for Biological Diversity filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of these waivers. And on March 26th, 2026, just a few weeks ago.
Are you serious?
A few months ago.
Yeah. Like a month and a half ago?
Yeah. A U.S. District Court judge in Arizona ruled in favor of the federal government. And according to this author, sacred sites, endangered species, and critical habitat all be damned.
Wow.
So there's been challenges to this, but and these guys are out there in their bulldozers with their contracts, their $1 billion contracts, and they're like, we got wall to build, suckers, and we're going through whatever we have to go through because we have the full faith and backing of the federal government.
That is just crazy to me.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And I also have to take a little bit of umbrage with lumping in biodiversity with cultural, because like
we're bio.
But the thing is that
however you can get it done though.
No, I know, true. But the thing is that like when you're talking about destroying the habitat of some endangered species, that sucks. But there's plenty more habitat for them on both sides of the wall. Well, but when you're talking about a cultural, intaglio like this, where there is only one of them, only one exists, at least like this, and you destroy it and it is gone. It is gone forever. It cannot be redone. It is gone. It is done. And like that feels so much more permanent and so much more terrible to me than destroying the habitat of animals. So having them lumped in together feels like a little bit of a disservice to cultural stuff. Yeah. But then again, we kind of have to ride on cultural coattails or on biodiversity coattails because people just generally don't care about cultural, which is so sad. But yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about this is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the intaglio, what does it say? It was first found and documented just 20 years ago by, again, archaeologists and researchers. Yes. I'm certain other people knew about it.
I'm certain
for
that
a long period of time.
The tribal groups in the area knew about it. Yeah.
Right. Sure. So, but anyway, it's 20 years ago. And this is another reason why, and I would love to know what the impact of these things are, but this is another reason why things need to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places if they are culturally significant. Because
I'm sure this is listed.
I'm not sure of that. Not sure at all. People, it's such a struggle to get something listed on the National Register.
I thought for sure it was.
Well, I don't know if it is. I don't see it in any of these articles.
Yeah,
so,
I don't remember.
Yeah, because that is a very different thing.
It's very protected once you finally get onto that list. But you're right. It's difficult and there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to get listed.
Well, and not only that, but you need the people willing to go through those hoops. And it could be cost prohibitive. It's expensive to put together the legal experts and the teams to write up the write-ups and to get all that stuff done. But if it is listed on the National Register, this should be this should be a lesson to anybody who's managing any resources along the perimeter wall where they know that this is going to happen to start getting stuff listed. It might be too late. Done.
Yeah.
It might be too late, but still.
Yeah.
But
there is something to be said for like the public outcry as well. Like there's a public outcry about what happened here after the fact. Yeah. But had there been more coverage ahead of it, maybe there would have been more time to figure out a solution that worked for all parties involved. Because I have to imagine there is a solution somewhere in here that would have worked for everybody. I don't know what it is exactly, but there has to have been something if people had just slowed down and thought and put some effort into it.
I have a feeling too that, again, the construction guys out there, I mean, they go home at the end of the day and crack a beer and watch some football, right? Like they're not just out here going, what are the cultural significance of all this stuff? Because there's an on-the-ground photo in one of these articles from Archaeology Southwest. And I mean, it's literally somebody standing on the ground looking down the barrel of this fish, right? Yeah. And it's looking from the wall, looking out towards the mountains. And it's hard to tell that's anything when you're standing on the ground.
It's really hard to tell.
You really need to see it from the air.
You do. Yeah.
And when this was first constructed 1,000 years ago, it could have had some other features. It could have been more deeply etched, but there's been 1,000 years of rain and erosion and just like all kinds of stuff. So those guys were probably being told, hey, there's something culturally significant here to us. And they couldn't even see it.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I said that in the beginning when we first started talking about this. I'm like, like, I'm not trying to like be on the side of the construction guys, but like, they don't want to do bad things. You know, they want to like make sure that they're following whatever the rules are. Now, if they're handed a blank check and said, destroy whatever you got to destroy, like, we don't care, then that's one thing. But like, nobody wants to cause an uproar. Like, that's not good for anybody. Right. So
it's crazy. This guy, Aaron Wright, who wrote this article, took this image that I'm talking about on my birthday this year, April 12th, 2026.
Yeah.
Before it was destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they knew that the construction was approaching.
Yeah. They knew it was
and
there.
they knew that it was going to be a problem. And then it just did not get the coverage ahead of time.
Well, and like I said,
could have stopped this.
The bulldozer people, they knew weeks, if not a month at least ahead of time, that this was coming up and it was going to be an issue. So their ignorance of the situation is not an excuse. It's just sheer arrogance and will that moved them forward and said, we're just going to go through because there literally are no repercussions.
Yeah.
So
it's just so unfair. And I never want to like stop progress. Like, I think it's a really delicate balance between progress and preserving of our cultural heritage. But this feels like a really terrible, like, overstep in destroying this piece of cultural heritage because it is so unique and so different. And you have to take that into account. And I'm not sure that this is progress, but like, that's getting into wall politics. And you told me to stop talking about wall politics. So I'll stop talking about wall politics. But like, like, why do we need this giant wall?
The crazy thing is,
like, why?
If you look at the next picture down, there is a giant wall there. It's not one of the areas, but this intaglio, though, this giant fish, lied within the enforcement zone where the secondary wall is going to go.
I know.
And it's right across half of it.
Yeah.
So,
but it doesn't need to. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, this section could have just fallen back on the original wall that is already there and is already doing its job.
But let's just, I'm not saying this is true, but let's just play devil's advocate for half a second, because that is what the government is doing.
I already did that a little bit in the beginning. I don't want to do it anymore.
But that is what the government is doing. So if you took that secondary wall and you dipped it in towards the main border wall, because you're not going to move the main border wall.
No, the one that is there is fine. It's doing its job and it's fine.
And unlike what you said, I don't think you can put the secondary wall around the intaglio either, because it limits access.
Well, they proposed that as an option.
Sure. But still, but nobody will be able to get to it. You're not getting into the enforcement zone, right? It's literally no man's land once you create that. There is actually that zone. I worked along an enforcement zone.
Yeah, you did.
In Yuma, Arizona area, right? And California, that area. It was crazy. Yeah. Right? There's literally two walls, one on either side of the river.
Yeah.
So it's the American River. No, was it the American River? Yeah, I think they called it the American River there. But anyway, the point is, even if they had dipped in, with this wall only being 10 to 15, the thing only being 10 to 15 feet from the main wall, you would have had the secondary wall dipping within 10 feet of that. And that's easily somebody could, prop some things over and they could get over. If Mexicans or other people coming through Mexico getting into the country is your biggest concern, and people are going to argue, that, hey, what's more important, protecting this barely visible thing on the ground or keeping people from getting murdered and keeping drugs from coming in the country? Because that's exactly what they're going to say.
I know that they're going to say it.
That's a whole other argument.
I get that they're going to say it, but they're wrong. They're wrong because the wall is already there. And like this new wall, they could have just chopped it on either side of it and, had it just come in and join up with the old wall, put walls on it there, I guess you could say, between the two. Is that making sense?
Kind of.
Like you have your new wall coming along and then put a 90-degree corner on it and turn it towards
just no enforcement zone in that one area.
Yeah, exactly. Just cut. Yeah. And then put all your stupid smart wall camera crap up so that you can have all your cameras all around. You're still covering the area. There's just not a physical wall there.
You, sir, are destroying national security.
Run some barbed wire if you feel like you have to. Like there are things that you could do that would not have disrupted this culturally significant item, but they didn't care.
That would just increase the number of tacos coming into the country.
I wish there was more tacos in this country. We don't need more tacos. No. The whole thing is so frustrating.
Yeah, it's stupid.
All I'm saying is that there are things they could have done. If they had given it more time, if people had cared more, they could have found a solution, a compromise that worked, and the government didn't care to do that.
Honestly, I just don't know why people aren't trying to get in this country through Canada. Take a boat outside all the way up the coast.
That is a lot of work.
Listen, people are paying thousands of dollars for this. That is a lot of work. take a boat up into the British Columbia islands there. You could get into Canada pretty much any way you want. And then come down through freaking Montana where there is 2,000 miles of no wall.
I know.
So
remember one of those border crossings we did between Canada and Alaska that was like unmanned, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was going down into Haines, wasn't it? Because it's a little section from Canada back into Alaska.
I mean, it was manned, but it was just like...
literally a man.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing, buddy? Well, and then the border, like we have a picture of us standing on the Canada-Alaska border, just crossing the main crossing on the Yukon Highway. And it's just literally the only way you can tell the border there is because they cleared out all the trees.
Yeah.
Like you can see a line going down that is the international border.
Mm-hmm.
And because they have to keep that zone free, basically.
Yeah.
So they keep it cleared out. But there's no fence.
There's no fence.
There's no anything.
Nothing. It's just a line of cleared trees. Yeah. It's very different on the southern border of the U.S. versus the northern border. That is for sure. And there's a lot more politics wrapped up in that we don't even need to get into right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, governments destroying cultural artifacts. It's cool.
Right. All right. Well, if we get our act together, if we don't, we'll have more news for you next week. If we do get our act together, if you've seen anything about a site called Mesa Verde in the last month.
Yeah. And then we also ran
a promo from the Ethnocynology podcast.
Yep.
And where David talked to the lead author, who's he's not the state archaeologist in Wyoming, but he's one of a big archaeologist in Wyoming, basically. Yeah. Todd Sorbo. And anyway, he talked to him about this renewed research from an old site down in South America that basically was the key site that we all learned growing up through archaeology schools and training. That was like one of the key pre-Clovis sites.
Yeah.
And so, but now they've redated it.
They're
pissed off a bunch of people.
Yeah. There's a whole like big, huge conversation going on right now that we need to wait. It's time for us to weigh in on that conversation because we've been reading a lot of stuff about it, doing a lot of research. So it's, we're just going to have a chat about it. Yep.
So if you don't know anything about it, go take a look. Go listen to the Ethnocynology podcast. Go find David's YouTube channel, David Ian Howe, and find his YouTube channel because his interview with Todd is in video and it's all up there. So go check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll have links to it on our show when we record it, but you can probably find them on the Ethnocynology podcast as well here on the APN.
Yep.
All right. With that, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Archaeology Show. Feel free to comment and view the show notes on the website at www.archpodnet.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArchPodNet. Music for this show is called I Wish You Would Look from the band Sea Hero. Again, thanks for listening and have an awesome day. Thanks for listening to this podcast. The Archaeology Podcast Network's chief editor is Rachel Roden. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy. Our social media and newsletter coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht. The APN was founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle on December 1st, 2014. We're supported by our amazing podcast hosts, many volunteers, and listeners like you. Check out membership at www.archpodnet.com/members.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.